Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's communicative.
It's educational.
It's sorta.
It's informative.
Kinda. Maybe.
It's music.
I'm Petey Rave, and the only bounty I hunt is the one for when I have a spill I need to clean up. And here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my cohorts. We've got David.
I have to apologize to the great Stephen A. Smith because at Colossal Con I did not stay off the weed.
He's shaking his head.
I live in California. You're good. You get an official pass.
Michigan
Stephen A's official response.
I'm sorry, Stephen A. I'm sorry.
Of course, we have Drew.
Look, it's Sandusky. If you're not at Cedar Point, there's not much else to do. Smoke a little weed, it's fine.
This is coming from the straight edge guy, so you know.
Sandusky has two things: Kalahari and Cedar Point.
I was at one of them.
A lot of strip malls and a whole lot of weed.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what Sandusky is.
Yes, exactly. Of course, a new cycle of episodes means a new guest. Is for now. We have the one and only, the fantastic, the talented DJM's co-host on anime podcasts of some sort, aka how I like to pronounce it, APOSS, because it rhymes with Macross.
Nice.
Jack D. Tyler D. How you doing, Jack?
Be gay, do crime. I'm ready to talk about some music.
We're here. We're talking about music. We're talking about an album. As we start off every cycle, I get to go first because it's my show, and I call the shots. And we're talking about an interesting artist that I stumbled upon going into Nerdcore Days over at South by Southwest a couple of months ago. An artist who got to see perform a few of these songs and more in his set list at one of the Nerdcore Days shows, and I found myself kind of very intrigued by the sound and by the style and the fact that he had an entire card set that introduced all the characters in the story of this album and the previous album. Of course, I'm talking about an album by a man called Alpha Riff and his cohort MZ. An album telling the story of a cybernetic bounty hunter and his AI sidekick. And this is the sequel album, and that it's called Digital Champions, More's Aeterna. I think somewhere like that. This is an interesting album. I'm intrigued to see what you guys were expecting. David, what expectations did you have coming into this?
Well, when I saw the album cover, it really caught my attention because it was very reminiscent of early to mid 2000s progressive metal, complete with the really strange CGI figure as the focal point of the cover. So I was immediately intrigued. I felt something of a kindred spirit when I started to dig into Alpha Riff and his music and his world. I felt someone that might be a spiritual brother in terms of appreciation of music. And I was intrigued. Very intrigued.
Very intrigued. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
The album art was weird. It was a name I didn't recognize, but having seen the track list and the features, I was like, oh, okay. So you have Shy Guy, you have One Up. Those are names I recognize. So I was sort of in. Yeah.
And Jack, my dude, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I really caught the fact that there were songs with multiple parts or that had similar names, and I figured they'd be some kind of a refrain. And true to my musical backgrounds, I was assuming this might be some kind of an album with a story or a concept album at least. And lo and behold,
Yes.
I think I might have guessed right.
Yes. By gum, I think you've got it.
By George. It was very interesting.
As
The album.
as someone who loves prog rock and concept albums, I'm gonna have a twist ending for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a really cool, interesting album, to say the least. It's a young artist, Alpha Riff. It is at least young in its career, relatively. It is a very cool album, very cool concept album. It's a sequel. I figure I'll go with this second one because I think it's a little bit stronger musically than the first one. Though I think it's worth checking out the first one just because you kind of actually get a first chance to meet a lot of these characters. But it is a cool rap rock concept album about, like I said, Alpha Riff, the cybernetic bounty hunter, and his AI sidekick MZ. As they battle to save IP, one of the central cities in Digitalia. You meet other characters like BB Stewart, Assembly, and because the proxies, Captain Proxy. It starts off with Captain Proxy. Let me pull out the card right here. Captain Proxy tasking the team to find his son, Christian Proxy, who then rescue him and bring him back, and it has this team of people who used to now go by the Horsemen, go off into the world of Digitalia and try to find and rescue Christian Proxy, and then there's other hijinks that ensue in the story. And I think musically it's really cool because it has a mix of like that. It's very much like at its core, it's a really it's born from the kind of motivation and passion that has built a lot of the really cool nerdcore albums over the years. It very much like stylistically and approach and music. It feels like a nerdcore album about a story, but it just so happens to have made up its own story rather than say like Black Materia, which is about Final Fantasy VII, or the Mega Man series, which is about Mega Man. This just happens to have it made up its own video game or movie to like retell the story of, which is really cool, and it has a nice mix of like what Alpha Riff definitely pulls from is his passion for hip hop, rock, metal, and prog. Like the Digitalia, the deity of Digitalia is the Great Prog. like you can't get more on.
I'm telling you guys, you're gonna get a twist
in that.
You're gonna get a twist ending from me, guys.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a twist ending.
I'm ready.
Yes, but I think it's one of those things where it's a really cool, ambitious album, and I think that it goes a lot of really fun places musically, and the story is fun and kind of crazy, and I think is ambitious in a great way. I think overall it's just a really cool record. David, let's start with you. How would you describe this album musically?
I would describe this as an amalgam of things that on paper probably wouldn't go well together. However, as I said about Alpha Riff, I sense someone that I would probably consider one of my tribe, a spiritual brother in a lot of ways, with his musical sensibilities, his creative ideas. These are all things, as Petey described, that I connect with. And Petey described the actual music of the album very well. I think, and let me be very, very clear, I think compositionally, there is a lot of heart, there's a lot of ambition, and there are a lot of ideas. And that is kind of where I'm going to be as nice as I can. It is extremely ambitious. It has a lot of really fascinating, really intriguing ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I think that given that Alpha Riff was doing this on a certain budget, he spent a lot on guest appearances and probably should have spent more on things like mixing and mastering and maybe getting a studio producer and an engineer.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely understandable. I think that if there were something I would nitpick, it'd be a little bit of the mixing and the fidelity, as it were. Drew, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes, elements for you?
Everything felt, wow, my voice is gone. Everything felt just about good enough. Everything was well put together. There was a lot of, like Deej said, forethought put into a lot of things. The musicality of it was coming from all over the place. I was really surprised by the reliance of distortion that I don't usually get with nerdier rappers, in my opinion. Whether it be like distortion in a dubsteppy synthy way, whether it be like the overdrive in guitars, it felt like it was coming from a lot of different angles. All the features and character work was cool. But the thing to me was that, like, at times, the lyrical flow felt like it was just playing its part. There wasn't anything that was, like, that grabbed me at times, which I think was kind of weird. Usually on an album, there's one or two things that, like, really grab me. Everything here felt like it was sort of just playing its role, playing what you needed it to be. And that's okay. But like I said, nothing right off the bat grabbed me, per se, I guess.
Jack, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, absolutely first thing off of my mind was this is very much pulling from influence story-wise, of course, of that kind of classic sci-fi anime for sure. And I agree with what's been said so far. For the most part, it's very big hodgepodge. And I'm looking over my notes here, just kind of like looking at my general impressions of a lot of the songs, and it's pretty much a mixed bag. There's a couple that I really enjoyed that were more closer to my thing. There were a few that weren't really to my taste, but I think that, again, is just very evident of the fact that this Alpha Riff knows kind of what he wants to experiment with musically. He knows what he would believe it sounds good, but I also agree there were a couple of tracks that were just a little bit too jarring, and I think that just maybe the backing track was a little bit too overpowering, and a lot of times, again, the verses were a little bit lost amid everything that they're trying to do. But it's a lot to keep in the air, and as far as it goes, trying such a massive amount of stuff and most of it land, at least sonically for me, is pretty good, especially since this isn't ordinarily the kind of thing that I would find and listen to on my own. But now that I've found it, I'm really glad because, again, seeing the guests here, people I recognize by name, it's intriguing. It's intriguing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it is. There's definitely, I definitely agree with again what has been said about like a little bit. There's something to nitpick about that. Yeah, is the mixing and the fidelity. But musically, I think it's ambitious, and we talk about like some of the as we get into some of the tracks. Some of the tracks that kind of like there's a lot of really cool moments. Obviously, it's a very dense, just in the track number amount. There's quite a few songs to pick out from. There's a total of 20 tracks, as it were. But you kind of like pick out some like key moments. Proxy to Proxy is almost like the moment where they kind of like the coming together, the horsemen horsemen out to ride. You know, like that thing works with.
Sorry.
Has some really cool verses. Yes, has some really cool verses. Has some really cool moments. I like the instrumental is really cool in that it has a good like energy to it, especially as it kind of goes into its into its full pace part way through, and I think it's really cool, especially like Tumelo's feature as the one of the eponymous proxies, be it Captain Proxy. I think it's really cool. We kind of skip ahead into the boys with gold coins, which I think is really cool because it's sonically on in a vacuum. It just sounds like a very it sounds like a straightforward braggadocious big pimpin' baller hip hop song. But it fits in the story in the sense of like them getting lost in the ostentatiousness of the city of gold, the city of Owl, and like it fits within the story while still being a really good song on its own on its face, and it has really cool verses by all involved. Boy with the Gold Heart. It being the presence of a Mega Ran, which is a nice little moment. He be playing the part of Rano de Miser, which I thought was fantastic. And he contributes another solid verse, almost like, of course he does. Like, of course he shows up and he kills the verse. But he does it really well, of course, and in character, as this is his style and he knows what to do with it. But I think overall it's still a solid song, and that kind of like the hook is really cool in it, and it has it is a nice like moment in the story. And I would say like the other parts I would say is like just the last three songs, like the Fate of the World Part 1 and 2 and Blood and Bond, because it provides a nice climax for the with the final battle. It instrumentally with Alpha Riff's production is really cool. It provides that I think just like early in the album, here and late in the album, it provides that nice fun like jump around mix of that hip hop and rock and the prog elements, and a lot of Alpha's singing, which is really cool. And I think the singing that I think was the main thing that intrigued me when I saw him live, where he would like be rapping these verses and then suddenly he's like this like screech like this like prog rock screech, which is fantastic. And this like, but he and then nails it with some really solid actual vocals, which is fantastic, and I think ends the album really solidly, kind of as Prog gives comes in to intervene, and I won't spoil, but it's a great moment and a hard choice that has to be made for the fate of the world. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Exactly 3. The Behemoth, Boys with Gold Coins, which in my opinion is far away the most cohesive and best track on the album, and Children and Warriors, I think is really great. I wanted to include Empire Man because I thought the verse and the hook were really good. Also, throughout this entire album, the one feature artist that really caught my attention was Twill Distilled. I liked her a lot. Twill Distilled.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, Sasky's like versus her, like her as Sasky is pretty fantastic, and like the moment she comes in is really cool. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
The dark one, the dark ones to start off just with this song that it had a very Zealous One vibe. Anybody remember Zealous One? I don't think he's put out anything for a while. Also, if it's the same dude, I wouldn't be surprised because it sounds very similar. Boys with Gold Coins. Yeah, no. One, the reference made me smile. But also, it's just a damn good track. There's something super cool about that, like almost 16-bit JRPG town vibe to the music, which I can dig. And then Crowned Fates. Why does the beginning and the chorus sound like it's from an early aughts emo track from like Tuesday? And then then there's rap, and then there's like growling before the next emo chorus. It's the weirdest thing to me, but like I'm for it. Like I'm down. Like
I'm here
down
for
the
it.
clown.
We're here for it. We're here for it. Jack, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, I definitely agree with you, Petey. Proxy to Proxy was certainly, I mean, according to my notes, pardon my French, but this is a jam. It's definitely the kind of thing that's closest to my taste, and I'm really glad that Drew is bringing in the comparisons to game music, because I've got a lot of these where I was just writing down what the fonts and like the instrumentation were reminding me of, and even it feels, and of course it being a nerdcore album, I'm sure there is some influence from gaming composition, because let's all be fair, it fucking slaps. Pardon my real French. But stuff like I was getting some vibes like David Wise, like Donkey Kong Country 2 synths, and even a little bit of the Super Nintendo game, Super Star Wars, stuff like that. That was really unique, but absolutely based in that sci-fi feel. I also really liked Anfiles. Again, I think the female guest vocalists were absolutely phenomenal, and they were the ones with the best flow for the most part, in my opinion. And again, the instrumentation in that was some of my favorites. I liked Boys with Gold Coins and Boy with the Gold Heart, kind of for similarity. I always like collecting remixes of songs I really enjoy, or reorchestrations and such, and they have that kind of common ground, obviously, which I really enjoy. And then of course Blood and Bond, I didn't think I'd heard any of this music before, but I've actually heard someone play this on their radio while I was on a road trip with them, so it was kind of great to hear it and get that moment of deja vu. And just it's a bit of a downer musically. It's a fully realized song, and when it comes to concept albums, a lot of times, especially with the fact that there's skits intermingled in here and bits and pieces, like I liked Empire Man as well, but a lot of these I wouldn't necessarily put on a playlist, if you know what I mean. So those were some of my favorites, because I felt like they were, again, the most independent they could be, the most fun to listen to on their own.
Yeah, like it was some of those other songs. Like you wouldn't put minute 5:33 to minute 8:42 of 2112 and put it on your playlist.
Wait, what?
Clearly don't know my playlists.
I mean, I am the prog rock guy.
Yes,
Petey. That is exactly the thing I would do.
You would put all of 2112. You just listen to all of it. Yeah, I think as you guys put it, yeah, those are the most solid tracks. I would say Boys with Gold Coins. I want to shout out to Bill Beats, who does beats for Shubzilla, and is fantastic in this, and is always fantastic in his work with Shubzilla. This won't be the last time we hear Bill Beats's beats. Just know that.
Involved in Fate 1, because if so, like the drums on that were phenomenal. Nice drums is what I've got here underlined repeatedly.
Fate 1, that was all, I believe, Alpha Riff. Is at least he listed on his Bandcamp production as Alpha Riff. So which you can go to alphariff.bandcamp.com if you want to go ahead and check it out. Yeah, let's talk about
album's like $7.
Yeah, like
it's pretty for 20 tracks.
Yeah. Let's talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what would be your conclusion on this as a whole?
I'm sorry. There is a lot on here that I want to like more. I feel like that there is something here from someone that I really connect with musically, who is almost on an identical musical wavelength as me. I hear someone that probably is more Claudio Sanchez than Arian Lucasen. In the case of Arian Lucasen with Arion, he creates his music and then builds the story around it. What I'm getting with Alpha Riff and Claudio Sanchez in that comparison is that he built his universe and then put his music on top of it. And I'm sorry, it just did not quite hit the mark for me. If I were giving it a grade, I'd probably be giving it a C-. I feel like the story, for a lot of different reasons, mainly because it was obviously very derivative, with a lot of prog sci-fi fantasy stories that you'll hear in music. They will have influences, but nothing so clearly derivative. A lot of this was very, to me at least, very, very on the nose, too on the nose. And maybe that's just because a lot of this has a lot of my DNA in it, and it just didn't quite come together. And again, I go back to the sound and the production and the mastering of the album. I feel like Empire Man specifically, that track was just flat out not mastered well. A lot of this album was not mixed and mastered well. And I can't give it a pass because of that. There is a lot here that I want to like. That there is a lot here that I want to appreciate. Alpha Riff is clearly someone who I'm rooting for him. I really, really am, because there is a lot here that I really connect with musically. The hip hop, the metal, the prog rock influence, the obvious sci-fi and fantasy story. There is a lot here that really hits close to me, but it just didn't quite come together as a complete package. Mm-hmm. I cannot give it a strong recommendation. I feel like his next album with a producer in a studio, I know I will enjoy it a lot more, but this one, I cannot give it a pass. I really can't.
Mm-hmm. Understandable. Drew, what would be your conclusion on this album?
Well, the thing about this album is David said to me my biggest problem, which is the music I thought was fine. The rapping I thought was fine. But it all felt a little forced. It all felt stilted. And that could come from, like I said, the feeling of he created the story and then put music to it. So the two line up at times, but it doesn't always. And that to me makes it a little disjointed in parts. I do like it overall. I thought it was a fun trip overall. But this is something where I can't easily recommend it to somebody who isn't fully bought into both like weird proggy rock and weird nerdcore hip-hop. If you were not bought into, I think, both, I don't think it works. If you are bought into both, I think you can find gold in the hills. I just don't think that it's an easy find for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Jack, what will be your conclusion at the end of it all?
I feel like I might give this another listen just to, kind of internalize everything again. Like I said, there's some good ideas here and a lot of fun kind of party tracks I might not have ordinarily discovered, which are pretty nice. And I might go back now that you've revealed this is a sequel, which I guess makes sense. If you pay attention to the skits, he's going like, again, I have to do this again. I might take a look at the first one, but if it's weaker, like, he doesn't have as much as he has together here, and we are finding flaws with it, I might be a little less forgiving with it. But this album was, it was okay. Again, not a lot was to my own taste, but I found some things. I was able to sniff out a couple of gold flakes in the dust.
Yeah. I think I could definitely understand the criticisms. I think it's fair. There is the big glaring thing is a little bit of the mixing and mastering, and it's just because he's just Alpha Riff. He's doing it the best he can on his own, collaborating with whoever he can work with within this community of people that are always willing to collaborate. So that's why he's able to get names like One Up and names like Megaram, because they're always down to just make music, and that it's him with his own stuff, making his own music, producing it on his own. So you kind of you can see where that comes from, and I think that with time, hopefully that can come together for him as he finds more resources and he commits more to his work as a musician. And you can check out some of his later songs. He's still releasing music. You can check it out on his Patreon. He's still releasing tracks here and there, so you can keep track of seeing his progress. I think it is fair to say that the fidelity is flawed, but the ambition is there. The music is fun, and I think overall pretty well made. It just it is belied by certain flaws, those flaws of the album. I think if going forward, hopefully Alpha finds a little bit more resources to kind of bring things together in a more finalized, tighter way. Because I think if that happens, there's a bright future for him, especially in this scene and in this community, because there's going to be a lot of people, as he grows and as he goes forward. Luckily, there's a community out there to support him. Just like he'll get more opportunities, hopefully, to see him at Nerdcore Days over at South by. See him collaborating with other artists as well. So I'm looking at this as somebody who's a blue chipper with potential, and I think this album shows a lot of that potential and ambition,
but
and
very unpolished. Very unpolished.
And I think that's something where you obviously probably not going to give him a pass for now, but I'm going to look forward to hopefully when he finds that polish,
when he finds the studio and the producer and I don't know, maybe like a lead guitarist to play some solos for him and just to collaborate and just make it a little bit more concise.
Yeah. So, and hopefully that's what he is putting out more stuff on, as part of the next chapter of the Digital Champion saga. He is putting out stuff in his Patreon. So hopefully some of that is indicative of that. And hopefully, he finds that going forward as he produces more. And hopefully if more people see the potential and go support him on his Patreon, maybe patreon.com/Alpha Riff. Go check it out. Maybe, hopefully with some support there, he'll be able to make that work. But I look forward to it. I think overall it just shows a lot of potential and is a fun record to listen to, if not a record, like you guys said, that I could recommend to everybody. But I think it is still a cool record. All right, let's get down to the main event of the evening. Let's get to the moment we've all been waiting for. our haiku reviews. Let's get to it. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Haikumero numero uno. David, what is your haiku?
Hip-hop prog opera. On the verge of something great, but needs some cleanup.
Drew, what is your haiku?
Drew.
You have
That's
something
you.
to
Not
share
on
with
mute.
class?
Nah. Some dang good music, along with mediocre stuff. Overall, okay.
Jack, what is your haiku?
I went a little meta with this one. Color me surprised. Sega militant robots were not David's pick.
Mm-hmm. No.
That's you got the twist.
Yeah.
This was not mine.
What a twist!
What did
I
we
didn't think it was great.
All right. My haiku.
Did a song.
Yeah. Rap rock opera. Inventive and ambitious. Promising future. It's snowing on my Fuji. Those are our thoughts on Digital Champions Mords Aeterna by Alpha Riff and MZ. You can, of course, find this on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. I did find out that you cannot put podcast episodes into a playlist. So, darn, so you can't do just a playlist and listen to us on Spotify, but you can at least listen to the album there. Of course, on that Spotify playlist will be next week's record, and it's going to be provided by David. David, what do you have for us next week?
My selection for the Record Breakers podcast, everybody, will be the brand new album from Miss India R.E. And the album is entitled Worthy.
Yes. We're not worthy, but we'll
Yes, we are.
Every one of us is worthy.
Yes.
Damn it, did you not listen to that record? One of the most...
Seriously, Petey, what the hell? Did you miss the point?
Yes, we're going to be talking about that next week. But that is next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at XDruciferX. Jack is at Jack D. Tyler D. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com is the email. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube. You can find us all everywhere you find podcasts.
Wherever fine podcasts can be aggregated.
iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify now. They made it easier to get on Spotify, so we're on Spotify now. So subscribe to us there. I'm sure a billion other places where they're aggregated. Do the things: subscribe, like, share, review, click
Apple
bells.
Podcasts, because iTunes is dead.
Yes.
Give Petey Rave 5-star, everybody.
Yes.
Cool.
Apple Podcast. I forgot that iTunes is dead. Good riddance. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Good lord.
Jack, say toodaloo.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Close enough. Toodaloo.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.